I'm standing here in the mountains of northern Portugal, where I've spent the last 3 weeks walking ancient pilgrimage routes. My feet are tired. My back aches in that peculiar way that tells you you've been alive today. And I've been thinking about control, not the kind of control we talk about in boardrooms or therapy sessions. I mean the fundamental human impulse to grip life with both hands and squeeze until it submits to our will. We do this constantly, don't we? We wake up with our lists and our plans, our carefully constructed visions of how the day should unfold. And then life, that magnificent anarchist, laughs and does something else entirely. I met a man yesterday. His name was João, a farmer in his 70s who's worked the same plot of land for 50 years. We shared bread and cheese on a stone wall that's probably been there since before either of us had grandparents. He told me something that's been echoing in my mind ever since. He said, "Adrian, when I was young, I tried to make the land obey me. I would curse the rain when it came too much, curse the sun when it stayed too long. I planted what I wanted, where I wanted, when I wanted. And you know what? The land fought me every single year. My harvests were mediocre, my body was exhausted, my spirit was bitter." Then he smiled, this beautiful weathered smile, and continued, Now I listen. I watch. I feel the soil. I observe the patterns. I notice what wants to grow where. I still work. God knows I work. But I work with the land, not against it. And it's not magic, but it feels like magic. The harvests are better. My body still hurts, but differently. And my spirit is quiet. This is what I want to talk about today. The difference between the clenched fist and the open hand. Between forcing and flowing, between control as domination and control as dance. Because here's the paradox that's haunted philosophers for millennia. How do we act intentionally in the world without becoming tyrants of our own experience? How do we pursue goals without turning life into a battlefield? How do we let go without becoming passive? How do we surrender without giving up? Let me tell you what forceful control looks like. It looks like a stone trying to change the course of a river by sitting stubbornly in the middle of it. The stone is hard. The stone is definite. The stone knows exactly where it is and refuses to move. And yes, the water flows around it. The stone can even claim a kind of victory in that. "See," the stone says, "I've changed the river's path. I've exerted my will upon reality. But look closer. What's actually happening?" The stone doesn't flow. The stone doesn't adapt. The stone sits there, rigid and unchanging, while the water, patient, persistent, infinitely flexible, slowly wears it down. Give it enough time, and the stone becomes sand. The river remains a river. This is what we do when we approach life with forceful control. We plant ourselves in the middle of existence and say, "This is how it must be. This is what I demand. Reality will bend to my vision, or I will break trying to make it so." And we do break, don't we? Or at least we crack. We crack under the weight of our own expectations. We crack when our carefully laid plans encounter the fundamental chaos of existence. We crack when other people refuse to be supporting characters in the movie we're directing in our heads. I've done this. God, have I done this? In my 30s, I tried to control everything. My career trajectory, my relationships, my reputation, even my own thoughts and feelings. I had a 5-year plan. I had a 10-year plan. I had contingency plans for my contingency plans. I remember lying awake at night, my jaw clenched so tight I'd wake up with headaches. mentally rehearsing conversations that might happen, trying to anticipate every possible deviation from my script. I was exhausted, not from working hard, I've always worked hard, but from the constant internal warfare of trying to force reality into compliance. And here's what I learned, slowly and painfully. Forceful control is not strength. It's fear wearing a mask of strength. It's the terrified ego saying, if I don't grip this tightly enough, everything will fall apart. If I don't maintain constant vigilance, chaos will win. But chaos isn't the enemy. Chaos is just reality refusing to be simplified. And when we approach it with rigid control, we don't overcome it. We just make ourselves brittle. The stone thinks it's strong because it's hard. But hardness is just another word for inflexibility. And inflexibility, in a world that never stops changing, is a recipe for fracture. Now let me tell you about water. Water doesn't fight, water doesn't force, but water shapes mountains. When water encounters an obstacle, it doesn't stop and say, "This shouldn't be here. This violates my plan. I demand that this rock move." Water simply finds another way. It flows around, it seeps through, it waits and accumulates, and eventually, gently, persistently, it transforms everything it touches. Water is soft. Water is yielding. Water takes the shape of whatever contains it. And yet, given time, water carves canyons through solid granite. Not through force, through presence, through patience, through the kind of power that doesn't announce itself. This is the alternative to forceful control, not passivity. Let me be absolutely clear about this, not resignation or surrender in the sense of giving up, but a different kind of engagement with reality, a kind of engagement that the Taoists understood deeply, that martial artists embody, that every skilled surfer knows in their bones. You don't control the wave. You read the wave, you feel its power, its direction, its rhythm, and then you position yourself in relationship to it. You act, yes, you act with precision and intention and skill, but you act in harmony with forces much larger than yourself. I learned this, ironically, from losing control. 7 years ago, I got sick. Nothing life-threatening, but chronic, unpredictable, humbling. The kind of illness that doesn't care about your plans or your deadlines or your self-image as someone who has their life together. For months, I fought it. I tried to power through, to maintain my schedule, to pretend my body was just another variable I could optimize and control. And I got worse. Not just physically, but spiritually. I became bitter, resentful, angry at my own flesh for betraying me. Then one morning, in a moment of complete exhaustion, I just stopped fighting, not stopped caring, stopped fighting. I started listening to my body instead of commanding it. I started asking, "What do you need?" instead of declaring, "This is what we're doing." And something shifted. Not immediately, not magically, but gradually. I began to notice patterns. I began to understand rhythms. I began to work with my energy instead of against it. I still had goals, still had work I cared about, but I approached it differently. Like water finding its path, not like a stone demanding the path come to it. My productivity didn't decrease, it actually increased. But more importantly, the quality of my days transformed. I was present. I was flexible. I was, for the first time in years, not at war with my own existence. So what does this look like in practice? How do we actually live this way? Let me offer you a different metaphor. The dance. When you dance with a partner, you're not controlling them. You're not forcing them to move in predetermined ways. But you're not passive either. You're engaged, responsive, intentional. You lead and follow simultaneously. You feel their weight, their momentum, their intention, and you respond in real time. A good dancer has a plan. They know the basic steps. They have a sense of the music's structure. But they hold that plan lightly. They're ready to improvise, to adapt, to let the moment unfold in ways they didn't anticipate. The plan is a framework, not a prison. This is how we can act in the world without becoming tyrants. This is how we can have goals without turning life into a battlefield. This is how we let go without giving up. Think about your breath. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're breathing. But are you controlling your breath? In one sense, yes. You could hold it, you could hyperventilate, you could breathe deliberately. But most of the time, you're not controlling it. You're allowing it. You're participating in it. Your body breathes you as much as you breathe. This is the model. Not control as domination, but control as participation. Not forcing outcomes, but influencing conditions. Not gripping life, but engaging with it. Let me give you concrete examples. In relationships, this means having boundaries and expressing needs without demanding that other people become who you want them to be. It means showing up fully without trying to script the other person's responses. It means being clear about your values while remaining curious about perspectives different from your own. In work, this means pursuing excellence without attaching your worth to specific outcomes. It means planning strategically while remaining flexible tactically. It means working hard without the internal violence of constant self-coercion. It means understanding that you can influence results, but you can't control them, and that's not a bug, it's a feature. In your inner life, this means having intentions for your own growth without waging war on your own humanity. It means noticing destructive patterns without hating yourself for having them. It means cultivating qualities you admire while accepting that transformation is gradual, non-linear, and often mysterious. You see, the dance of control isn't about being in control. It's about being in relationship. With reality, with other people, with your own unfolding life. And relationships require something that rigid control can never provide. They require presence, flexibility, and the willingness to be changed by what you encounter. So how do we cultivate this? How do we move from the stone to the water, from forcing to flowing, from control to dance? First, we practice noticing. Notice when you're clenching. Notice when your jaw is tight, when your shoulders are up around your ears, when you're mentally rehearsing arguments with people who aren't even in the room. Notice when you're trying to force an outcome instead of influencing conditions. Just notice, without judgment, without making it another thing you have to fix. Just notice. Second, we practice asking better questions. Instead of, how do I make this happen? Ask, what wants to happen here? Instead of, how do I get them to change? Ask, how do I show up as my best self regardless of what they do? Instead of, why isn't this working according to my plan? Ask, what is this situation trying to teach me? Third, we practice holding our plans lightly. Make your plans. By all means, make your plans. Vision is important. Direction is important. But hold them like you'd hold a bird, firmly enough that it doesn't fly away, gently enough that you don't crush it. Be willing to revise. Be willing to discover that the destination you thought you wanted was just a stepping stone to somewhere you couldn't have imagined. Fourth, we practice trusting the process, not in some naive, magical thinking way, but in the deep understanding that reality has its own intelligence, that timing matters, that some things need to ripen, that your job is to plant seeds, water them, create conditions for growth, and then get out of the way. The seed knows how to become a tree. You don't have to control that. You just have to not interfere with it. And finally, we practice self-compassion. Because you will forget all of this. You will clench again. You will try to force again. You will turn back into a stone in the middle of the river. And that's okay. That's human. The practice isn't about never clenching. It's about noticing when you're clenching and gently, kindly, opening your hand again. I'm 58 years old. I've spent decades studying philosophy, traveling the world, talking to wise people and fools, and everyone in between. And here's what I know for certain. Life is not a problem to be solved through sufficient control. Life is a dance to be danced, a river to be navigated, a breath to be breathed. You are not the director of reality, you're a participant in it. And that's not a limitation, that's liberation. Because when you stop trying to control everything, you free up enormous amounts of energy. Energy that was going into clenching, into forcing, into the exhausting work of trying to be the stone that stops the river. That energy can go into presence instead, into creativity, into genuine connection, into the kind of action that flows from clarity rather than fear, from love rather than control. The mountains are getting dark now. Soon I'll walk back to the small village where I'm staying, where I'll have dinner with people whose language I barely speak, but whose humanity I understand perfectly. Tomorrow I'll walk again. I have a rough destination in mind, but I've learned to hold it lightly. The path will teach me what I need to know, and maybe that's the final wisdom here. Trust the path. Not blindly, not passively, but with the kind of trust that comes from understanding that you're not separate from life. You're an expression of it. You're not controlling the dance. You are the dance. So let go. Not of your intention, not of your effort, not of your care. Let go of the illusion that you were ever in control in the first place, and in that letting go, discover a different kind of power. The power of water, the power of breath, the power of the dance. Thank you for walking with me today. Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and remember, you don't push the river, you learn to swim.